Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Business Morning. 55 minutes of current and relevant business conversation. That's what awaits you on the program. As usual, I'm Ini John Mekwa, and we start the program from the global space. Oil prices have dropped to their lowest in more than 4 years in early trade on Wednesday on looming demand concerns that's fueled by escalating tariff war between the US and China. These are the two world's biggest economies, so you can imagine. So while the tariff do not directly affect petroleum products, but of course the fears that it would affect demand generally has brought this upon the world. So oil is down 3.39% at $60.69 a barrel. WTI is also down almost 4%, 3.96%. $57.22 a barrel. And we know, of course, that it's all connected to the tariff. This drop we've seen the lowest since March 2021, while WTI is lowest since February 2021. Both benchmarks have tumbled over the 5 consecutive sessions since U.S. President Donald Trump announced sweeping tariffs on most imports, sparking concerns a global trade war would dent economic growth and hit fuel demand. The U.S. will impose 104% tariff on China. That's the plan from 12 a.m. on Wednesday because they say China has refused to take away that reciprocal tariff which they announced. So it's a tariff-ridden world at this time. And guess what? Nigeria also has its own share because yesterday there was an announcement that Nigeria will stop the import or export of about 25 items to the U.S. following that 10% tariff that the U.S. has placed on Nigerian goods. So, and we, of course, we've seen reactions to that, but let's get more reactions this morning with Dr. Biodun Adedipe, the Chief Consulting of B. Adedipe Consult. Dr. Adedipe, good morning, and thank you so much for joining us on the program.
Very good morning to you, Amy. Thanks for having me here.
So, I mean, there were stories that the U.S. is not happy that Nigeria is reacting to the 10% tariff by stopping the export of about 20 or 25 items to the U.S. How do you think Nigeria should have responded to this 10% tariff?
Yeah, thank you so very much. If I were in a position to get the ears of Mr. President, I would have advised that Nigeria shouldn't react the way we have done. And my reason is very simple. If you go by the data that we deal with, and that is looking at our foreign trade data, it tells you, number one, that our exports to the US is largely hydrocarbons to start with. And that takes between 90 and 92%. And of course, on this, as you rightly said, no tariffs on hydrocarbons to start with. So we are looking at a window of about 8, maximum 10% of what we export to US being non-oil in nature. But that is not the end of the story. We should also look at the value involved and then ask ourselves, if there's an increase in tariff, I mean, some reports say it's 14% that the US government slammed on Nigeria. Of course, some say it's the minimum 10% that applies to all countries around the world. Now, whichever way it is, in my own view, our response should be more strategic, not direct in that manner. Instead of putting a restriction on the export of those items, which are simply to start with, ignore that, but now think about what to do. Should we begin to interrogate the direction of our trade in terms of redirecting the trade, not necessarily coming out frontally the way we have done? Should we also consider several other opportunities within the African region, where we talk about the Continental Free Trade Agreement? Can we begin to look at African countries, and now we can increase our footprint of export of non-oil products to other African countries? So this, to me, should be the direction. Let's strengthen Nigeria's competitiveness internationally, rather than reacting directly to what the US has done in this instance.
So on the other hand, we've seen the yen weakening, and it seems it's intentional by the Chinese government, to make their goods cheaper. What do you see? And of course, Nigeria trades a whole lot with China. What do you see from that other routes? Because it seems the world is trying to build new trade routes at this time.
Exactly. In fact, that has been the issue. My own thinking, this was perhaps one of the reasons that triggered this tariff, let me say, quote and unquote, assault on the rest of the world by the US government. That's the way I interpret it. The thinking is that the direction of trade has shifted largely more to the East Asia, but of course, mostly with China gaining a lot more influence, not only in terms of trade and economics, but even geopolitically. So in trying now to kind of, countermand that, there was this thinking that if we use tariffs, we can actually truncate that new flow. But we are in a different world today than what it was some 30, 20, even 10 years ago. And that's the reality that if I were in the cabinet, let's say in the US, I would probably be a very lone voice in President Trump's cabinet that will advise to go a different route. So now, in the light of all this, the reality for Nigeria, for me, is to look more in the direction of China, which is our major trading partners are today, in terms of imports and, of course, even exports as well. So in which case, our own strategy response should be focused more on how China is responding to that and how that can affect our trade relationship with China and some other major trading partners of Nigeria.
All right, Dr. Adedipe, thank you so much. This is obviously an ongoing conversation. Founder and Chief Consultant of B. Adedipe Associates Limited, thank you so much for your time and views this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Well, let's give this conversation, a broader view. You might say it's still about tariff. What else can we discuss this morning? We have Claudine Moore. Claudine Moore is Africa Managing Director at Allison Worldwide to give us a global perspective to this morning. Claudine, you can look at me, it's fine. You're welcome to the program.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Great. So it's all about tariff at this time. The good, the bad. I wonder if there are some goods in all of this. But what changes in the world, in the trade world, trade routes, with all this introduction of tariffs and counter tariffs?
Yes, so thank you for having me. First of all, always good to be here. So I'm not an economist, so I can't speak about this from an economic perspective in terms of the sort of political economic ramifications. But what I can speak about is PR and communications. And what I can speak about is that Nigerian and African organizations now more than ever is a time when their PR and communications and essentially their storytelling is essential. You've got to present an investment story. You've got to present an investment story to globally, to investment partners, both domestically and across the region. But you really have to dig deep into, it's a new day. You have to dig deep into what your organization, your country, your brand, what you're offering to stakeholders, and really digging deep in presenting that investment story and what the benefits are to your partners, not the impact it's going to have for you and your organization.
So what would a Nigerian investment story at this time, what would it look like?
You have to really align with universal challenges. What are some of the challenges that are being faced in the world today, and how and why is your Nigerian organization a solution to some of those universal and global challenges? It's not just enough to say that, again, as I mentioned, it's not just enough to say this is how it benefits us as a country. It's about what are some of those universal challenges and how you're offering solutions.
And so whose responsibility would this be? The private sector has a lot to lose. The public sector obviously has the responsibility of running countries.
Yeah.
So who should head this storytelling, investment storytelling at a time like this with so many disruptions?
Everybody. Everybody has an investment story. It's from a different angle. So if you're public, private sector, the angles are different, the stories that you're telling are different, the opportunities are different, but it's everybody's responsibility. I don't think any organization that felt like that's the private sector should do that, whereas the public sector shouldn't, are doing themselves a great disservice.
And you talk about effective visibility, looking for businesses trying to seize some opportunities. I mean, with Dr. Adedipe, the man we just spoke to, talked about the fact that now it does seem like from China, goods are beginning to have reduced price because the yen is weakening.
Yeah.
You know, that
Weakening
creates
drastically.
Yeah, so that creates an opportunity for some businesses. But how do you use that? That's another story.
So again, I can speak about it from a communications perspective. I think at that point, what you really have to do and sit down is, what do we have to offer? Do we genuinely have something to offer, and is there genuinely opportunities? And really digging deep into what those opportunities are, and really understanding your stakeholders and what their objectives are as well. Not every stakeholder has the same objective, so you really have to also tailor your investment story to the particular stakeholders.
So if you were to advise African businesses, Nigerian businesses, Nigerian government at this time, from the communications point of view, which is your area of passion, what would you tell them?
I would say, again, looking at some universal challenges, looking at your local narratives, and aligning them with global perspectives.
And do you see strengths, for instance, from the African perspective, from the Nigerian perspective, that you think should be highlighted in this communication at this time?
We have the resources, and the world needs them. That is exactly what I would say. We have the resources, and the world needs them.
Wow, that's sharp and straight to the point.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Claudine
Thank
Moore,
you.
for this communication and telling of investment story aspect that you have brought to this whole tariff war issue. Claudine Moore is Africa Managing Director at Allison Worldwide. Thank you for your time.
Having me. Thank you.
All right, let's take a break now. When we come back, do we take a break from tariff? We'll see about that. It's still here on Business Morning. Stay with us. You're welcome back to watching Business Morning here on Channels Television. We do know that data is the new crude of today. I know crude is losing some money at this time. I hope data is not. But let's talk about having an efficient data center, and that's what Rack Center say that's the intent to do. We have the Chief Executive Officer right here, Lars Johannesson. Hi, Lars. Good morning and welcome to the program.
Good morning, Ini, and thanks for having me.
Great. So, well, they say data is the next crude for the world, and everybody has to, think of how to get the data, preserve the data, protect the data. What's Rack Center doing about data?
Well, the Rack Center in these turbulent days, we are doing exactly what we've done the last 12 years, actually. We are protecting that crude, of what we call the new gold. So in our hands, we're making sure that all data that's being generated, created, and used by clients and businesses are being stored and kept in a very, very resilient environment. So that kind of business-to-consumer conversation or the business-to-business conversation can continue in a good way, in a reliable way.
So you say you've been in existence for 12 years now. What have you been doing? How have you been staying sustained for 12 years, more than a decade?
It's a fantastic journey. Rack Center is very much a 100% owned Nigerian company. It was based upon very much an entrepreneurial insight into see that what was happening, okay? So for the last 12 years, we kind of gained a lot of insights of how the data sector will grow and how data will become the new crude, as you said. And since 2013, we have gradually been building up a very solid ecosystem with carriers, ISPs, and clients in the Nigerian market. And what we're doing right now, around the corner, tomorrow actually, we are launching the next phase of our business trajectory. And that means that we're multiplying 8 times our existing capacity. And that means that we're taking care of the new demand that is building up in Nigeria and all around the world, I would say. So I think our last 12 years has been a continuous path of success and resilience, thanks to the team on the ground.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm just curious. You serve businesses, you serve individuals, and I do know, I mean, just following the trend of things around the world, the hunger for data has changed. In this 12 years, I'm sure you cannot compare, what you have now. Could you take us through the trend and how you are able to customize, and meet up with these needs from individuals, from businesses, and all your clients?
Yeah, it's a good question, Ini. I think to clarify, we are very much a business-to-business environment. business consumer taken care of by our clients, so to say. But when I look at the growth that we have seen so far, I think the whole data center has maybe also been a bit badly explained sometimes. In the beginning, it was very much anyone that could host a server, certain data capacity can do that in any location. And that was maybe about 15 years back. Now we have evolved these models. It becomes extremely professional, technical, savvy environments that a data center is all about. So when we see the growth happening at the same time, you can also see how we engage as consumer with the data and technology. It has changed radically for the last 15 years. Today, there's not one single thing we can do without engaging in a digital way, so to say. And what that means is that when we add 100 million people like we are doing here in Nigeria that start to use and consume data, the explosion of data is just happening all over the place. So what we see now is that we are multiplying with 8 our existing capacity just to cater for the initial demand that's happening in the market. But better for Nigeria is the fact that it's not only Rack Center that builds this increased capacity. Our peers' ecosystem is also building up for it. And that's a good thing. You need to maybe go back a couple of years and also reflect on the fact that the PC uptake was considered to be very fast when we started using a laptop and everything. And then we start to talk about the internet evolution, how fast that was picking up. The next phase that will dictate what we're going to do and the whole sector going to do is AI. AI will drive the way you and I interact with technology. It will actually just put a turbo effect on the whole digitalization, and we are ready for that build out as well.
So you say you do mostly business to business. So businesses contract you to get data for them. How does it really work?
Yeah, you can have any large retail bank in Nigeria, all of them represented at Rack Center today. You can have the carrier, the big ISPs. What we actually provide, a data center in Rack Center in this case, is we provide a meeting point. This is a meeting point where these companies can, sometimes for business reasons, sometimes for regulatory reasons, they can locate that data in a very safe environment. And once they place that data in their infrastructure in our environment, we can connect these different pieces together and we create a very fast ecosystem that makes sure that our communication as consumers goes immediately, it never goes down, we have a certain resilience in system. That is what we provide to them.
So all this LGS2, how do you differentiate yourself in terms of technology, security, efficiency, especially security? That's a sensitive one.
That's everything we do.
Yeah.
But we have been very innovative. We had a Lagos 1 that now becomes Lagos 2. It's a bit of an expansion here. But Lagos 2 is a brand new data center. It's a 6,000 square meter facility, which is actually so innovative. So I would claim that what we have in Lagos 2 is probably the best you can find in this continent. We are bringing Nigeria to the right place. We are putting it right in the spot of having the best infrastructure in place. And come back to security and resilience, that's everything we stand for. But to provide security and resilience is not really enough for a leading data center's Rack Center. It is also about providing sustainability, okay? Making sure that the power that we actually do demand to keep this business running the whole time is efficiently managed the whole time. This is a scarce resource, and I'm very humble about that one. And in the leadership position we are in, we need to make sure that sustainability is on the front end in everything we do. And so far, we have managed to do that.
And you promise you're going to ensure that Nigeria is at the fore, beginning with West Africa and then the continent. You won't hop off to South Africa.
We will not hop off to South Africa. We're a proud Nigerian company. We'll maintain Nigeria in the right position the whole time.
So given the scale of investment of Lagos 2, which you just talked about, how do you manage and balance the issues around cost optimization? Because you talk about infrastructure. Yeah. We do know we have a huge infrastructural gap. So trying as a private sector to fill that gap brings in a whole lot of cost. So how do you manage that and efficiency and still being consumer friendly?
The best we can. The best we can. It's a constant balancing between making sure that this very, very, very expensive equipment that we bring into the market is also balanced to what our customers can pay for it. And this is delicate balance, particularly when we have had a bit of a seasonality, can I say that, in terms of depreciation of the Naira and other volatilities. That's complex. But it's one thing that I think makes us stand out and manage this balance between cost and delivery the whole time, is that as long as you deliver, not only what the client wants, but beyond what they want. You can do that balance because this is a long-term business. It's a very critical business that we cater for in terms of our clients' business. So I think cost, delivery, and do it beyond what the client expects. That makes this balance work out, but it's tough.
But you're also looking at cloud adoption. How's that going? How's response to that?
But the cloud adoption is part of the whole sector. Everything that happens in Nigeria and the rest of the world today is that all companies is adhering to the cloud adoption. And when we talk about cloud, it becomes many times very kind of, cloudy. But at the end of the day, the cloud is located in a very physical place. And the majority of clients that had a cloud, they actually locate that physical presence at Rack Center and our competitors.
So you have the plan of putting Nigeria at the center of West Africa when it comes to this. You also have balancing that with making Rack the go-to company when it comes to data. How does this fit into your long-term vision, and what can we expect to see from Rack?
Well, Rack Center has been here since 2013. We have been the leader, and we are the leader in that area. And our ambition and idea is to stay in that position. To stay in the leadership position, you need to innovate the whole time. To do what we do today is just not enough. It will never bring us to where we want to go. So what you will see more of from Rack Center is that, number one, you will see a fantastic inauguration tomorrow of the biggest data center in Western Africa, Nigeria. Outstanding. Then you will see continued messages of...
That would be in Lagos?
That will be in Lagos, around the corner. Around the corner. You're most welcome to visit us. But you will also see the continuous growth, not only on other probably expansions further on, but you will see a lot of focus on what I call sustainable digitalization. That's making sure that the energy that we consume in our data center is managed in the most efficient way. And if we can, and when we can, we will now introduce solar into the energy mix as well. And that means that we're also adding another layer of delivery excellence to our clients.
Sounds very interesting, especially the sustainability part, because the world is preaching sustainability now with climate change and the impact around the world. And I guess we can expect, as you said, perhaps we'll see solar and other, because electricity is a major one in Nigeria.
It is. And we have been very innovative in that area since we started. We were very early out taking on and adopting gas turbines, which has a very, very better footprint than maybe the diesel gensets and all that stuff. But the next step for us now is that we're going to inaugurate with the solar panels on top of our building, and we'll expand that well. So we have a nice balance between the resilience, sustainability, and what our client expects the whole time. So you will definitely see more of it, because that's where the whole industry is going. You cannot drive digitalization and not having a sustainability brand on top of it. You cannot.
Yeah, I think that's kind of obvious. Thank you so much, Chief Executive Officer of Rack Center, Mr. Lars Johannesson, for your time. Wish you the best as you try to take over the world.
We will do that. Starting from Nigeria. Most welcome to visit us.
Thank you. All right. All right, from Rack, let's talk about, I know we've talked about the Investment and Securities Act. It's now a law in Nigeria. We're speaking to the sponsor of that law from the Senate. Senator Osita Izunazo is the chairman of a Senate Committee on Capital Market. Joins us from Abuja studio. Senator, good morning and welcome to the program.
Good morning and thank you for having me.
Well, I think by now you're being celebrated. The president has given his assent to the law. It's a new dawn, especially for digital assets. They've been very happy about this. But why did you think of this? What loopholes did you see in our existing laws that made you think of this upgrade to our investment and securities law?
Well, thank you very much. Well, if you look at the Investment and Securities Act of 2007, you will discover that there are lots of loopholes. That is why we didn't just amend it, but it's a repeal and reenactment of the Investment and Securities Act 2025. So many loopholes are so glaring. It didn't give SEC the powers you're supposed to have in line with global realities. So we have modernized the law. Today, SEC is having that number one principle of IOSCO, which is to have a very strong regulatory authority for the regulator. Today, the crypto and the digital assets are now part of securities. That wasn't the case in the last act. The last act did not empower SEC to regulate crypto markets or even other digital assets. But today, crypto can be regulated by SEC. And you see, it has also cured some kind of regulatory conflict, maybe between the CBN and SEC. You know that in the past, the CBN said they will not regulate crypto because they didn't see it as one of the investment instruments. In fact, I mean, they only saw it as an investment instrument and not as a payment system in Nigeria. But today, SEC is oversighting the crypto, while the CBN is solely responsible for its money market system. So you can see that even that conflict has been reduced. That is even the same case in the United States, where it is the SEC, the US SEC, that oversights the asset and digital securities, but not the Federal Reserve, as the case may be. So you can see that there are so many loopholes. Today, you have a structured commodity exchange that was not there in the last act, particularly as it concerns the agricultural sector and the mining sector. So there are so many. We can't even exhaust it this time around. That is why it has to be a repeal of the 2027 Act, so we can reenact a new, a modern, more regulatory, robust, and legal framework for the capital market in Nigeria.
So the most excited of all of this seem to be the crypto community, but obviously digital assets is not just about crypto. What can we expect to be different when it comes to digital assets investment in Nigeria following this law?
Well, you know, there are several aspects of digital assets, which has to do with financial technologies, fintech. Today in SEC, they have a department for financial technologies. They didn't used to have it before. Today, there's a milestone, there's a surveillance tool between the CBN and SEC. And to that extent, SEC is also advised to expand its surveillance tool with agencies like Office of the National Security Advisor, agencies like NFIU, agencies like EFCC, DSS, and even Nigerian police. So there are several digital assets that we're talking about here, but it has to synchronize because it's a very volatile system. If you don't synchronize it properly, then we might lose track of what we're trying to cure. So this is the intent of this particular legislation, to ensure that all digital assets are synchronized in a particular system, not just the crypto market, but you will agree with me that even in the crypto market, Nigeria is number 2 in the world, globally number 2 in terms of adoption and transaction. Nigeria is number 2 after India. But even then, it is not even regulated, and Nigeria is number 2. What about now there's a conscious effort at regulating the crypto asset and the digital asset in general? So I think there's a proper development and is synchronizing with world realities on how best to use the capital market to shape the economy of a nation.
But, you know, talking about the digital assets, especially crypto at this time, it does seem that there's still work to be done to get proper adoption from the CBN, for instance, to get banks buy-in and allow individuals or businesses to freely invest and trade around that. Any plans to accelerate that from where we are now?
That is the essence of SEC oversighting the crypto sector in the country. Like I told you that it is not the responsibility of the CBN, but they have to work in collaboration. They have to have a surveillance tool where the two agencies can work together to ensure, even what I'm telling you is that even as it is today, globally, they think that the crypto market in Nigeria is regulated. But I'm telling you, it's not regulated because it's a very volatile market. But with this regulation that we are put in place, it's going to make it seamless. You know, it's a blockchain technology. It is something that when you plug it in, much as it is global, but you can trace the wallet address of any blockchain experience. The same way, if you are operating in the fintech, you'll be able to know that BVN, this particular BVN is from Nigeria. The same way you know that this wallet address is from so and so country. So there's a lot of work to be done, but it is better that we start somewhere that we didn't even start at all, because there's a lot of money to be generated into the system through the crypto and digital asset formulation and robust regulation, which is the most important thing. Before now, it's not regulated. Now, SEC is about to resume a robust regulation for the crypto asset in Nigeria.
So the Act also looks at issues around fraud and Ponzi schemes and all of that. And some would argue that while it looks good on paper, building that confidence, investors' confidence, which is what all of this is about, goes beyond the law to the actual work done by those in the value chain, in the institutions to implement this. I mean, if somebody doesn't get punished, another person, or if somebody finds a way to go around the law, then other people feel they can still do it and get away with it. So, I mean, having the law, that's good, and everybody's happy about that, but it doesn't still assure investors that government policies cannot change, the fraudulent individuals cannot get away with it because the institutions are not, as implemented as they should be.
Well, before now, the enforcement strategy of the Commission is weak. But with the recent act, it has strengthened the enforcement policies of SEC. So Ponzi or pyramid trading, once you are caught, it is 10 years imprisonment. And you pay a fine of up to 20 to 40 million. And also, you also have to refund all the money that you collected from people. So these laws are made as deterrent so that people do not engage in Ponzi. Because now we have stiffer penalties, unlike in the past. And it is not only about Ponzi. Every other transaction in the capital market, once it is manipulated, you pay a fine, you are imprisoned, or both. If you get involved in insider trading, you pay a fine, you're also imprisoned, or both. So you see, it is now being strengthened and tightened that people will be scared to even go into it. And they can be tracked using the advantages of fintech. This can be tracked anywhere in the world. So I'm sure that with this new policy, this new regulation, those who are planning to, or those who are already in the art of Ponzi, I'm sure they will do a rethink. I can assure you that it's going to stop. It will stop, certainly.
Okay, so taking a wider look at our capital market now, we've been talking about how to increase listing, get bigger market cap and all of that. Is there anything that can be done to attract more participants in the market listing on the stock exchange now? So at least we can tower up to countries like South Africa.
Well, it's rather very unfortunate that today in Nigeria we have only about 155 or 56 companies that are listed on the exchange. But that is not how it's supposed to be. Government is supposed to put certain measures in place to give investors confidence that they should come to the capital market. If you recall, the capital market some years ago in Nigeria was booming. Thereafter, people lost their monies and they lost a lot of confidence in the capital market. But the capital market is gradually coming back. So I think there should be a conscious effort to get most companies, particularly companies that have that are government companies to get listed. Last time I heard about NNPC Limited talking about getting listed on Nigeria Exchange. That should be a very welcome development. We should encourage NNPC to come on board and also encourage other government-owned companies to come on board. And it is not something government is going to force any company to get listed, but government can put certain measures in place that if your company is listed, these are some of the advantages of it. That is why in the Senate Committee on Capital Market, we're aggressively going into stakeholders' engagement to explain to Nigerians the benefit of getting involved in the capital market. Because the days of people not having confidence is gone. Today, even the issue of unclaimed dividend can be tracked, and people can easily get their money back. So I believe that Nigeria has come of the stage where people should have more confidence in the capital market, and we're building it. But it is a collective responsibility of those already in the capital market to even explain to other companies who are not in the capital market that these are the gains you are supposed to have if you're in the capital market. I know the reason why some of these companies don't want to be listed, because they will think that once you are listed, then you have opened up your company for scrutiny. But there are other advantages of getting listed. If you're listed, you can attract more foreign portfolio, more foreign investment to your company. So I don't think there is need for companies not to have confidence in Nigerian Stock Exchange and get listed. So we are talking to them. In the next quarter, the Senate Committee on Capital Market will also be engaging listed companies in Nigeria in a round table to explain to other business entities the advantages of getting listed, and also to tell us if there are areas they think government should play a role, then we'll discuss it. And government should do what they're supposed to do to strengthen the capital market.
Yeah, Senator, I'm happy that you said, okay, you're going to engage more for next quarter. But I mean, when we talk about government doing more, you are the government that we know. You are the lawmaker, and you are heading the capital market committee. So I guess it's now up to you to create some incentives.
That is why you can see that the new law is in place. And I must even commend Mr. President because of his foresight. The moment National Assembly passed this legislation, it didn't even take Mr. President up to 2 weeks to assent to it. He never queried it. He didn't raise any objection because he knows the importance of strengthening the capital market in Nigeria. So I must commend him because even some of the ingredients of this new law tallies with his 8-point agenda. So I must think that Mr. President knows exactly what he's doing, and I believe that more attention should be given to the capital market. The Minister of Finance and the Coordinating Minister of the Economy, we have engaged him severally, and he's also working tirelessly to ensure that this stakeholder participation we're talking about is a reality. So we as government, we as lawmakers are doing our best to ensure that capital market is given a lift, an uplift in Nigeria ecosystem. That is the way it is as of today.
And another issue which we often discuss, making the capital market more attractive, especially to, the younger generation, is getting more digital. While the NGX, for instance, we've seen them, but there was the demutualization, and then we're supposed to have more digital access and all of that. But you still have some encumbrances when it comes to digital trading. For instance, you want to trade from an app or so, and maybe you want to sell off, you have to wait +3 days before you get your funds. These are some of those things that we think need attention to make the capital market, especially the stock exchange, more attractive to the younger generation who are always in a hurry to get in and make some money and get out.
Well, thank you for this question. You will realize that NGS, otherwise known as Nigerian Stock Exchange in the past, today you have one of their subsidiary, CSCS, that is responsible for ensuring that this trade goes on in and out within a period of 3 days. The last time we engaged them, we told them that there is need for them to reduce it to 24 hours, so that once you trade, you can You can sell, you can buy and sell, and get your money within 24 hours. And they assured us that they are going to improve on their system to get it done. But as for digital asset, this is one of Nigeria's biggest developmental effort, in the sense that our teeming population, the youths, are largely involved in this trading. And you know they are doing this trading without regulation. Without regulation. People are trading anyhow in the forex market, but today there's a regulation, which means that people will have more confidence. The youth can trade more. In fact, when you see youth pressing their phones, most times they're trading. It's not as if they're sending messages. You won't know. While they're in the offices, they're trading. That is why the adoption of crypto, Nigeria is number 2 globally, like I said earlier on. So I think that we have started well with this new legislation. This legislation will enhance, because there are so many questions going on now. There are so many things agitating the minds of Nigerian youth. Where are we heading to? What is the impact of what we are doing to the economy? So you can imagine the type of money we are losing in the past without regulation, because it's a free market. It's a global market. People can do anything without being regulated. But today it's going to be regulated. And Nigeria will be in to make a good sum of money from this transaction. So I believe that our youth should get prepared. The regulators should also get prepared. And even the investors should get prepared, because Nigerian stock market is going to boom. I see a boom in Nigerian stock market. I see a boom in the investment instrument of this country. I see a boom in the investment vehicle of this country in the next couple of months. I see a boom.
All right, I want to see that with you too, Senator. Thank you so much. Senator Osita Izunaso, Chairman, Senate Committee on Capital Markets.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
All right, now let's head to the NGX studio, talking about the NGX there. Will Ibong is there, and she has global stories, which, well, takes us back to the tariff story, or tariff vibes, which is the latest thing in the world at this time. Will, what stories do you have for us today? I'm sure President Trump is still moving the world.
Of course, Ini, good morning. When you said earlier that away from tariffs, I chuckled. I said we can't be away from tariffs because tariffs are everywhere. And I'm glad that you came back to it. So that's what is trending in the global space right now. And that's my story for the global news. It's filled with tariffs. We see the new wave of tariffs that was imposed by President Trump, which is not beyond the 10% tariff that kickstarted last Saturday, as taking effect early today. And we're seeing it being imposed on goods coming from countries, from about 86 countries all over the world. And this is a lot to take in, because countries are still digesting this and seeing ways to come out of it. So the latest round has been described as reciprocal tariffs, which we all know, and it goes beyond the 10% based tariff that I've mentioned earlier, and it comes into force today, April the 9th. Now, products from 86 countries face increased tariffs ranging from 11% to as high as 84%. Now, analysts say tariffs could lead to higher prices for imported goods and fuel tensions with global trading partners. Now, the impact is expected to ripple through international markets and may influence diplomatic and economic relations in the weeks ahead. But still on the tariffs, we see also that Trump raised the tariff for China to about 104,000. That's the net tariffs imposed on China starting Wednesday. That's today. That's according to the White House. And President Trump had warned that it would keep his word unless China removed its retaliatory tariffs on U.S. goods by Tuesday, but China did not remove. Despite the warning, Beijing refused to drop its 34% counter tariffs prompting Trump to push ahead, and he has given China a deadline China a deadline of 12 o'clock. That's midnight of Tuesday. That's getting into Wednesday. But Beijing didn't budge, and we're seeing that standoff remaining unresolved. And the hours leading up to the tariff hike, Trump worked the phones with U.S. allies, showing a willingness to negotiate broader trade deals. However, the steep tariffs increase. The steep tariff increase has raised fears of a deepening trade war between the world's two largest economies. Meanwhile, news coming in today also shows, and you spoke about it earlier, that China's yuan has fallen to the lowest level against the US dollar since 2023. And there are worries also about a recession in the US. But we've seen news from San Francisco's Federal Reserve Bank President Mary Daly on Tuesday, being the latest US central banker to speak on this, saying that there's no rush to cut interest rates, with what they're saying that the economy is still robust, and they've not even seen the extent to which the tariffs, the impact of the tariffs, the extent to which the tariffs would impact the economy. So there's no rush to cut rates right now. So Canada, let's move on to Canada. They are feeling the pinch of the tariffs. They said they're going to be, implementing 25% counter tariff starting today, on some of U.S.-made vehicles. This move is in response to the existing U.S. tariffs targeting Canada's auto sector. The federal finance minister says counter tariffs will remain in place until the United States removes its own tariffs on Canadian automobiles. Officials describe the action as necessary to protect Canadian jobs and industry. Talks between both countries are ongoing, but for now, Canadian consumers and auto dealers may begin to feel the impact of higher prices on affected U.S. vehicles. Now, we're going to the UK to see how the tariffs are impacting the economy there. The Bank of England Deputy Governor Claire Lombardelli has warned that the U.S. tariffs announced by Trump will likely depress the UK economic growth. She made comments yesterday, that's Tuesday, adding that the full effect of the inflation is still uncertain. Lombardelli notes that UK policymakers are closely watching the fallout from plunging stock markets, rising global uncertainty, and slowing growth. Now, these factors will play a key role in the central bank's upcoming interest rate decisions. So this is what is happening right now, and we're going to be talking to Maria Bird. A lot is going on in the space. We're going to be starting off with the 104% tariffs targeting the China, and how U.S. is planning on the strategy they have to go on with this. Maria, it's good to have you. Let's start with this. What's the strategy behind President Trump's move to hike tariffs to 104%? And how is Washington receiving this? How is the reaction in Washington following this 104% net tariff?
Well, the tax imposed at 12 a.m. Wednesday today is something I think that many Americans were not surprised, but a bit shocked. I think that yesterday was kind of a day of watching to see what was going to be next. Were there going to be any further negotiations? Was the president going to be able to potentially do something different? Was he going to be able to negotiate with China? Because I think the concern is that there's so many goods that come in to the U.S. from China. There's a lot of trade that goes back and forth between the two countries. And specifically, the U.S. uses a lot of Chinese goods for many of its parts that are, whether it's for housing, whether it's for automobiles, whether it's for cell phones, technology. There's so many things that are used. And so the concern was really, how was that going to have an impact on the economy? Well, we saw how it impacted the market. And so I think that's a direct correlation to kind of how the U.S. responded.
So how are businesses, especially the importers, how are they reacting to the steep tariffs? Because they are directly involved in this.
Yeah, so those who import goods from China, I think, are a bit concerned. Obviously, that means that potentially we could see an increase in retail prices. So, so many things in the U.S., those who have been in the U.S. say made in China. And so when you see those items that say made in China that were once potentially a price that people could afford, one of the reasons why there were so many goods brought in and imported from China was due to the fact that it could be items and goods that could be sold at a reduced rate. So the concern is really going to be around whether or not retailers are going to be able to keep those same prices. Likely that that increase is going to be passed on to the consumer, who then will have an increased price in being able to buy goods. And so I think where Americans are concerned is what is that going to mean when Americans are still struggling heavily with being able to address inflation issues. Americans have still been trying to get more money in their pocket. We still have not seen the kind of growth with wages that many are expecting, especially when you're seeing this level of inflation. So there's much to be concerned about. Even without tariffs, the U.S. was seeing inflation.
I just want to know, is the U.S. really prepared for this backlash, especially now that the new tariffs have taken effect?
Well, I think that the U.S. is not surprised. I think that wherever you sit on the, Republican or Democrat, I think that there has been discussions around what the backlash would look like, what a global trade war would look like. But as we know, there is a larger plan here by the president, and he has not necessarily said that he's expecting this to end up benefiting Americans, but if you look at the strategy and actually how this is impacting the entire globe, not just the United States, I think his what he's focusing in on is the strategy around being able to bring everyone to the table, to be able to negotiate and to come up with trade agreements that his administration believes will benefit the U.S. and hopefully benefit the entire world. And so we know that we have seen challenges not only in the U.S. as a result of the tariffs, but also across the globe. So the backlash, I think Americans are expecting. They're expecting to see that. I think that we saw that on the first set of tariffs. I think that we know that the tariffs around Mexico and Canada. You mentioned earlier that the automobile industry, when you think about how close of a partner and strategically and physically close Canada is to the U.S., the automobile company being right there in Detroit, where it initially started in Michigan, is right across the line from Canada. So thinking about how easy it was to transport those vehicles, but potentially the challenges that could exist with the increased prices that will be as a result of tariffs. So I think Americans are watching, they're waiting, and hoping that obviously a trade war leads to potentially some strategies to be able to reduce the cost long term for the U.S. and obviously come with some good trade agreements.
Thank you so much, Maria. We do hope to see a de-escalation of these tensions very soon, in the very near future. And thank you also for keeping an eye in Washington. We'll be keeping track of these developments, and we also appreciate your insights as always. Thank you, Maria. So back to you, Ini, in the studio. It's Trump tariffs and more tariffs. You mentioned yesterday the TT. So I think we're just going to be having more TTs to come in the weeks to come, Ini.
All right, thank you so much, Will, for taking us through the global space right there. And of course, it's all still about tariffs. That's the world of tariff we're living in at this time. Just before we let you go, we'll tell you that the NGX yesterday, that's Nigeria's stock market, recovered, thankfully, as did a whole lot of markets around the world, especially from the Asian part of the world. We saw a recovery in most of those markets. Driver, perhaps, they feel the worst is over, but with this 104% tariff on China from the US, we don't know how the market will take it today, but Will tell us intraday numbers later on. NGX is still on 104,000, recovered 0.15%. Equities cap is 65.5 trillion naira. Activity was mostly red yesterday, and top gainers, the builders and Sterling NG. Top decliners, we had NACO, NEM. Top trades, once again, the banks leading, Access, GT, and Fidelity. So intraday, I'm curious to see how the market is responding to this 104% tariff on Chinese products into the United States. That'll be during Business Incorporated, as well as other updates from the world of business. I'm Ini John Mekwa. I'll talk to you later.